Hello, my name is Andrey. I have been programming for 10 years or 12 years to be exact. For 5 years I worked in Ukrainian banks, which are actually foreign, but the offices were in Ukraine. Then 5 years I worked at the California startups and projects that are associated with fintech. I work with different type of projects. Um, Most of these projects are in financial area. And I have customers from New York, and roughly speaking, all my life I was engaged in finance, and my education is also financial. In early 2017, I learned about blockchain. I began to actively learn it, to read it, to study. And for me, it was like a new property of money that needed to be understood urgently. I started my study from the Ethereum, but I tell you the basics. In general, I was preparing for general audience, not to the developers. So there will be more such general thesis. If someone is interested, then next time we will prepare a lecture which will tell details of consensus of algorithms or some mathematical. For this purpose we have a special, I have a friend, Sebash, he's a mathematician. At the age of 16 he graduated from the university, he's a teacher now. Therefore, we will prepare for these lectures with him. But now it will be more general concepts. Bitcoin started with the fact that the problem of the mediator between the transfer of money from one person to another person was solved. And this problem is complex. To solve it, 4 components were needed. The first is communication, which was carried out by peer-to-peer. The second one is resistant to censorship, which is implemented through proof of work. The third one is accounting, which is implemented through a blockchain. And the last one is the property right, which is realized by means of digital signature. The combination of these 4 technologies released the goal of excluding the mediator. We will be focused on communication. Communication is carried out through... So, there should be participants in the peer-to-peer network in which there is no difference between the participants. They are absolute clones of each other and interact according to one protocol. In such circumstances, it is possible to agree on the real conditions of consensus. It's roughly speaking, in my opinion, an indispensable condition. It's very difficult to agree on other terms. How did they agree? Let's do an experiment. For example, we arrange competitions between the 3 participants in 2 minutes. The winner, who runs a greater distance, gets an apple. And turns out that if... Well, we already have results. David ran 800 meters, Peter ran 400 meters, Ivan ran 900 meters. The winner is he gets an apple. But if we constantly repeat this operation, Ivan will always receive apples, and Peter and David will always be hungry. And so we will change the task, how to make sure that Ivan did not always receive apples, but that they be distributed according to the work done evenly. And now we have a question, how to properly build a solution to this problem, so we have it turned out. It's a question. I understood. Yeah, the probability and how correctly to display this so that it would be obvious. We must combine all the results into one general result. It turns out that we can see the area of each of the winners, and on top the apples can fall in a random order. And it's obvious that someone who does more work gets more results. But those who have done less work to receive. And accordingly, there is a uniform distribution. But if you look further, there is still the vulnerability of the fact that the person who receives more apples still needs to be made so that the network is stable to the fact that he does not receive, did not size the network, did not control it. Therefore, we will drip an apple and not to tell anyone where it is. And consequently, here to choose any point to search for apples, and they can do the job of finding this apple. And consequently, to one with most resources is not the fact that he will find it. He can just do the work and find nothing, just waste energy. And in this way, is still resistant to large expanded resources. Roughly speaking, this served as the fact that the goal was achieved, Bitcoin began to perform its functions. But humanity is faced with the fact that, after all, it has limited uses. It allows you to send huge amounts of money very cheaply. It takes away all sorts of risks. But we need to move on. You need to make new uses. For example, let more users, hide transactions, hide addresses, amounts from users, from external auditing, and make the blockchain more smart. Litecoin realized. Litecoin implemented a model of blockchain where transactions are faster, but it did it not for free, but due to the fact that it reduced the resistance to censorship a little, but the blockchain remained reliable. Monero solved the problem of anonymity, but they solved this problem. They applied the algorithm of the ring signature. And in principle, it's a very good algorithm. Next time I'll tell you about it in details from the mathematical point of view. And it has the right to exist. There's an additional property of the blockchain. But they also changed the interface of Monero interaction, like Litecoin. Litecoin, roughly speaking, in the continuation of Bitcoin, and Monero neglected all the infrastructure already working on Bitcoin and created their own branch. Dash went the other way. They began to move away from Bitcoin and also realized this property of anonymity, but at the same time they slightly influenced the protocol. It made network now not peer-to-peer. What happens? Well, network is on different nodes, responsible for different things, and that's why it's not a very clean model. Zcash, they were pure mathematics, and they wanted to live on pure model of decentralization, and at the same time add anonymity as an algorithm. And they did this with the help of the zero knowledge proof protocol. And accordingly, they now use the entire architecture of Bitcoin, allow you to conduct transactions, plus add additional properties. This is considered an ideal mathematical model. There is no side effects. Ethereum came and it changed the interface and added smart contracts. That's the same. New branch, Bitcoin remains behind, the entire infrastructure can be thrown out. It's not used here. We must write a new architecture under the Ethereum. EOS. It's neglected the interface, it's neglected the protocol, and it's decided to change the consensus. As if, it turns out, in their opinion, 21 authorities who believe that they will replace proof of work. And here the question arises, will it be replaced or not? Here, let's say, EOS, in order to develop its platform, collected money on a competing platform called the Ethereum, and Ethereum could not prevent this process at all. That's the question. If we want to develop on the platform of EOS its competitor, will we get it, or they will make a decision after all, as it's not profitable for them to destroy their platform on their platform? Well, regarding the resistance to censorship, the issue is very controversial. I wanted to suppress this EOS in my head and forget about it, because I really do not like It when changing the interface with the blockchains. I'm a developer. I'm used to certain instruments. Here you can give an analogy. Driving by car. Always use the same gearbox. Then comes EOS and says, we made SQL machine, very fast car, and at the same time you have the back speed instead of the first one. You must retrain, because you decided to rewrite everything, and it did not work for me, because there is one use case for EOS. They use the Ethereum instead of the virtual machine. Instead of everything that was developed earlier, they use WebAssembly. And this, in principle, can be a good solution, because WebAssembly allows you to write absolutely in all languages and applies to game development. Accordingly, games, this is a space where it is not very important that, well, suppose you lose your X, some kind of virtual one, then nothing special will happen in the world. In principle, it's blockchain. It's kind of like you can store some artifacts. It's basically normal. And in games, very often you need to send transactions. And in this case, they're game contracts, which they came up with, even make sense and maybe get popular. But I would not keep large sums in this blockchain. Well, after creating many different protocols, many different wallets, a whole zoo. And for you, if you use some kind of blockchain, you want to change it, you have to completely remove all software, put a new one, retrain. It's very uncomfortable. The decision on the internet is there is a multi-currency wallet that try to unify everything. But it is very difficult because new blockchain are created which change the interface in a new way. Well, some people try to at least find this, and the problem is multi-chain. I will explain what its principle. Bitcoin and Litecoin. Well, the latest changes in Bitcoin and correspondingly of all is other forks, let's say, all the followers who were this visit were implemented. It implemented the method of exchanging cryptocurrency between blockchains without having to try this process to a third party. It turns out that you can with Bitcoin. On Bitcoin, create a temporary contract, create a transaction in the Lightbox, there is a hash exchange. As a result, either the transaction took place and everything happened decentralized, or the transaction did not take place. Well, the third option isn't given. And this atomic swap is already implemented between the family, obtained Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dash. I personally tested that cache, so I'm sure. I found the solution already for an atomic swap for the Ethereum and Bitcoin is obtained. I'm more than sure that it works, but has not yet verified. But when I check, I'll make it green. And why does he go through Dash? It doesn't matter, it's all together. There's one interface. Why I talked about communication between nodes? Because it's very important. When there is one interface, you can negotiate. Roughly speaking, the atomic swap is an agreement that exists between the blockchains. And if you create a new blockchain, you'll need to follow this agreement. Because people will be able to convert your unit, they can be converted to your blockchain without the need to use exchanges. Look at EOS NAM. NAM is not going to use atomic swap at all. Well, they wrote on their own. EOS, that Daniel Larimer wrote what he wants. Well, he thinks about it. I do not know, maybe it does, maybe it does not. Here I wrote it turns out 4 points, which are internet Bitcoin. They inherent in a multi-cache with an atomic swap. Still, there is an opportunity. Alternatively, you can use a Lightning Network. It also allows you to do this operation, but in general, it was created for other things. More to make it cheaper, to make several transactions, roughly speaking, instead of one for the price of one transaction. Oh well? If you want to exchange coins from Bitcoin network in Monero or EOS, you need to use exchanges. And there are a lot of exchanges. They are straightforwardly all striving to solve this problem. So I hope that when atomic swap is fully implemented, the stock exchanges will lose weight? Well, here's another such question we asked ourselves. Can I implement all features in one blockchain? And the short answer is no. You cannot. For each individual task, you need to make a separate blockchain. Roughly speaking, you can create so many different experiments and people will choose which experiments are successful and which one are not. In this scheme, it's clear that everything starts with zero trust. When you create something, you move to being trusted. Then, when you come to this, you can not go on alone as a person or a team. You must mathematically move in a direction so that your work no longer requires trust in you. Closer to trustless. And when you reach a position that you no longer need to trust, then people will not believe that you can be hacked. So, roughly speaking, they are sitting right now on the proof of work because there is a consensus that does not need to be trusted. But the problem is that it's limited in resources and how people are turning back to resources that needed to be trusted in order to increase the volume of transactions. So, well, I said that. I repeat that it's possible to create as many experiments as possible, and it seems to me that there is no need to create any voting systems. That's exactly what I will not use something and there is my voice. If I use something, it means that there is some use case that suits me. And this applies to everyone. Well, here I just presented with my head a list of possible experiments that I have not yet found in the cryptocurrency and the apps in general people can implement it. For example, it was often mentioned that for bitcoins you need to implement smart contracts in order to continue the development of the Bitcoin infrastructure. Also, it's necessary Bitcoin to implement ring signatures. That is when, roughly speaking, to make anonymous Bitcoins. But you don't need to do it right in the Bitcoin. You can make it a hardcore of this branch and implement it in the branch and let people through atomic swap go try and then go back if they don't like it or in some other blockchain. Then you can make an anonymous Ethereum. I wonder why no one's done this. Many different ICOs pass, everyone is trying to decentralize the internet the same, but the algorithms that have already been proved work have not yet brought to the Ethereum, such as zero knowledge proof and ring signature. Then, the same crypto node. There is a separate branch, and already works by itself and you can bring smart contracts. There already has an audience. They already are businesses. You bring them some new uses. They will use them for some of their purposes. You may even not know them. Then, for the Ethereum, it seems to me that it makes sense to try to implement a dynamic consensus. In order for the contracts themselves to indicate which consensus should govern this contract. This is, not Ethereum will say, I want proof of stake, I want proof of work. No, I want to be in the middle. No, I'll think about it. And people just give and let them think for their project. Maybe to me, I run the test project, maybe I generally need proof of stake, and I will have cheap transactions. I don't need any other for this to go some other network. It will be convenient for me. Well, you can implement the same blockchain with a simple JavaScript contract. There's also such a thing, but the goal of this blockchain can be just to teach people to program right here in the browser, so that they learn it. Roughly speaking, the training blockchain can do the same. Further, to the smart contracts, you can add configurable sharding. A smart contract can be said that you do not go to all nodes, and you only need 20 nodes. In order for you to admit that you are rude to say, this will be enough for you. In principle, there is a sufficient level of trust, and accordingly, this is also due to the decrease in the cost of transaction. Then, Web3 can add trusted oracles. I often faced the problem that you need to develop, take a trade, And on the basis of trade, make a transaction. And when you take a trade, and you should store this trade on a server, or there it is not clear from somewhere. Better when the Ethereum itself takes this trade in some contract, which the entrance becomes. And when the Ethereum through receiving the trade is already called a solidity contract, already a real smart contract, with the conditions that it took itself, that the node itself took. And in this way, it's possible to solve the problem of the rates. Well, roughly speaking, on the data and the entrance which you need, real data can be differently called. You can also add bitcoins with Trustless Oracle. There is also the option to add free transactions, upload some transactions to Bitcoin or Ethereum, well, some real data, so that people can use them and pay for using them. Because there's very much missing. Without this, again, it's necessary to build a centralized infrastructure for which you need to monitor a particular person or company. And moreover, to follow through the fact that the private key lies on some centralized service and can be stolen. Later, still, here to me it is not clear why create exchanges. Why not create a stock exchange with one roughly and Ethereum with one node? And it will have the interaction interface to be preserved as usual, as well as on the other. But inside, you can optimize the logic of the exchange, centralized, for example. It turns out, roughly speaking, a blockchain with one node is a centralized product. And further, the last experiment is a refundable Ethereum. Roughly speaking, you can develop. Now more I'll show you. I will talk further about this experiment because I want to try to implement it. So, about Ethereum itself, there are a lot of questions to it, and frankly, I have already ceased to believe in scam projects. I stopped believing in general that in the Ethereum project that being launched, they are getting some kind of funny. It seems to me that there are some schemes that are incomprehensible, which they do not agree with logic. And I thought that if really people create experiments, create different blockchain, try, then in principle anyone can do it, including myself or anyone. And when one of the experiments, now I'll tell you his logic. This is a mental experiment. I'm interested to hear your opinion, even more criticism than that it will not work. Because of this criticism, I can build some sort of, roughly speaking, the following understanding. Now we send the transaction to the Ethereum. The first sender sends money to the second. The second can immediately send money to the third. If the broadcast is sent to smart contract, then smart contract can regulate it. Imagine the situation, then Ethereum has implemented a functional that any transaction is a smart contract. There are no normal transactions. And when I send some other, I can set a timer. So it may be a day, 2, 3, 5 days, a timer when the recipient can spend this transaction, transfer to the following recipients. And it doesn't matter where I'm posting, where I'm transfer. Although I'm sending this to a person even on a smart contract, I always have a refund button at the time that I lay down. Roughly speaking, along with the transaction, I send people an understanding of how much I believe in him. And for example, people send transactions to a startup of some kind. A startup does not need to create any smart contract. People themselves create the amount of the smart contract is confidence in this project. And the startup can regulate these transactions through what the result shows. If the result is, and people leave the broadcast to the team, then people leave the Ethereum to the team and there is no result, people take it back. And if people will corruptly cheat, just revoke the nodes. Well, the fact is that there is such a principle, but what prevents? Let's say I got several millions on the ISO, for example, and that's it. My goal is fulfilled. What prevents me from leaving? Now everything is so big that the state cannot protect. Today, the project collected $1 million, and 15 minutes later, he collected 400 Ukrainian hryvnia because everyone withdrew everything. The point is that this transaction is a vote. Voting of what? Yes, it's a voice that can be changed, but it's not this in conflict with all this crypto ideology. I will now explain. Well, such sums and so will not be. You see, these are conditions that do not work for scam projects. They are conditions that do not work for scam projects and other projects. Some hidden. Well, again, you see from the point of view of ideology, what the whole thing is interesting for the fact that it's mathematical. The fact that is we signed that it works, and here is a question of trust in people who send money to us. Today they send, tomorrow they change their mood. Correctly, can I then explain differently? I already explained to my client, Les, look, there are those people who will send you transaction. You do not give, these people trust you. You can register in a smart contract. If you send a transaction that can be refurbished but set it to 0, then they have you trusted completely. You pay them for the trust. You charge more tokens, you charge more benefits because they do it. So that you can get enough trust to ensure that the following people give the trust of their money. Roughly speaking, a big man went there, led that venture fund, came in and gave $1 million with zero confidence, and they completely trust. All the other network members see that such big guys trust them and put 0. Well, firstly, let's say I will explain this. First, there is field for reflection. If a large company came in and gave a million, then say, I don't believe this project, because it means maybe there is some kind of hidden agreement about which I do not know. Some hidden business is obtained, and maybe they are waiting for me to send out transactions later. This is people have the right to choose. That's just the fact that there is this information of trust. People had the opportunity to analyze what is happening. Because now it's happening. Through a million, from somewhere, some, and then possible start throwing. But I do not understand where this million came from. No, in general, no one knows. No, it seems to me that there is some sense in the idea. It's just we need to work hard on it. Yes, I agree. It's just experiment and realist. It seems to me that you just invented these things actually. But Vitalik Buterin said this. The fact that the collective management of the fund is actually the same mechanisms exist, as it were, and corporate governance is called the supervisory board, or even easier things, when we have some criteria, some KPI, and the trenches given our money depending on the performance or not the performance of this KPI, and depending on the results of the audit or lack of results, the auditor makes a decision on the basis of the auditor's decision. The supervisory board takes one way or another. So, all these structures exist in corporate governance for decades. Yes, but I believe personally that every person should conduct due diligence. You should not delegate to anybody. Well, it's their choice. They can lose. Well, just imagine you collect ISO and where are your competitors. Today we will bill $1 million. You think, yo, everything is fine in 3 days. I will all be called off. Well, 4 days you will get enthusiastic to work and you will advance at all. No, no, you will fail. Well, think money that still have such a property as a tool. If you have a feeling that they are near you, then you somehow work better. But they cannot be all on escrow because you need money to realize something. But we'll immediately not talk about 100% of the amount as on EOS $4 billion. But for example, if there is $1 billion, well, yes, 50%. 50% will say so in their management, and 50% can really be considered voting for further defrauding of these funds in case the project is successful. Look, you can finalize a smart contract, and the time of investing information is available with what kind of trust a person gives money. If he gives his confidence, we allow 5, and there is no money at all, you can do a reject. We do not start work, let's say, on trust. We need some money in the amount, say, 100 Ether, for example. We have enough to show this kind of result, and the others can already throw in the result. When a person throws money, he just keeps them. He trusts this project. While he was spending them, he took and to not spend it. So, why I need it? Why do I need it? Well, now it works so that you can lose $1 million. Roughly speaking, we choose from the two evils the least evil. But then there might be such a question that when the user sends you money, he allocates 50% for 100% trust, certainly an investment that he will lose 100% in your ICO, and 50% will go to this trust program, which he can then identify under a number of conditions that are recorded in a smart contract. If they are not fulfilled, he has the right to return his money at a certain moment. If they are fulfilled, then they pass to you, well, yes, 50-50. Yes, the smart contract implements the function refund. It still prescribes the logic of the refund itself. Well, you can take token, and when he picks up money, you can generally write the logic that tokens can all claim. Can I prescribe the logic that he will not get anything at all? Yes, in this case, it turns out that before sending anyway, a person can check the terms of smart contracts. It's still an arrangement. But it turns out the difference is that now the agreement is with a private person, and there is an arrangement like as a already public contract with the contract interact. Well, for yourself, what kind of application do you see this for? You have an idea. You probably solve a problem for it. First, I found the options. So we had one ISO project, Snowy is called, and we all did very safely. We were not hacked, but they hacked into the admin who owns the domain, and he copied our admin panel and made large sums for that. Then another address of the contract was substitute full copy, and categorically that the money goes not to that contract. And as the project received money, it does not need to spend everything at once. He directly received, immediately spent. You can do some kind of grace period of 5 days. And during these 5 days, you can make it clear that the money was sent not there. Unless return to the client. Say, that do refund, because they did not come to us. Not with us, they had someone else. He cannot, because money is blocked. Well, the fact is that he can send himself a simple address. The fact is that all transactions are a smart contract. Wherever you send, you can do a refund. The second is exchange. They constantly say that they are being hacked, or deduce money somewhere there. Withdraw make on the not clear address. Again, you can withdraw money to exchange. If the exchange discovers that the money was stolen, it can withdraw the transaction back, so it can withdraw money to these traders back. The fact is that you can develop a smart contract. By the way, they did not reach for some reason. Well, the third case. This work is acceptable with the same freelancers. You send money to them, They do use work. They did the work, but you're a public person. They can write it about you. He returned the money. Well, in any case, it's fun. It turns out that if the one place where the process of refund is normally implemented is an atomic transformation. Because in this case, what you say is always in any situation the performer is not safe. Absolutely always. Well, in ICO, roughly speaking, the investor bears all the risks and the executor disposes of the money is squeezed as much as necessary. And there is another extreme in which, roughly speaking, the investor constantly keeps a snap on the performance neck. And we are, by any smart contracts from 0 to 100, choose a twist in this place. Criticize this model, there is a type of scam, back and forth. Criticize this model, the ICO, which Vitalik suggested E2 to put it immediately, did not like the people. Guys, we need to pump the dollars, otherwise it came out of the project. Can I already start asking questions? Yes? Excellent. Then I really... In fact, I don't even want to ask a question, but to voice some list of remarks that I heard, which cut my ear. Firstly, you said that the nodes are the same, at least in Bitcoin. In fact, this is not so. Everything depends very much on how the node is configured, and they do not look the same for the outside world, because in Bitcoin, if you know, there are a huge number of hubs that connect to other nodes. It's affiliating with large exchanges or with large miners. They do not look like an external observer. It cannot be said that this is an ideal, symmetric, uniform network, uniform graph. Then there's nodes that work under net and without net, and they work very differently, because if you have a node behind net, no one else can connect to it. And so purely technical limitation of TCP/IP stack imposes a very big difference between different types of nodes in Bitcoin. Then, at my first remark, the second is that the POF is evenly distributed. Well, not evenly, but you show that there is at least a Gaussian distribution. In fact, this is not so. At least because we always have the risk of selfish mining. Guys were studying this issue, and it turns out that after crossing a certain amount of mining capacity, you have a non-linear increase in the reward from creating new blocks if you change the strategy as a broadcasting block on the network. This is the second point. About the fact that Litecoin is faster, if we look at the confirmation of transactions, that in Litecoin it's simply distributed in time better, and that it is easier to roll back the Lightbox unit. But nevertheless, it can be said that it is faster, because if we wait for 6 confirmation Bitcoin to us, it's equivalent to it. It's necessary, it turns out, 24 confirmation to waiting. It's not faster. It has the block appears more quickly, but trust, and as money does not appear as true. And in the first place, depends on the mining capacity, then about the fact that Monero all created from scratch. Actually, it's not. This fork Bitcoin. And CryptoNode, which was created within the framework of Bitcoin, and Monero, the fork of. But the fact that not really Bitcoin and Monero teams dispersed. Well, yes, but this fork. First the Bitcoin was created and then Monero was forked. Monero forked a CryptoNode. Zcash, on the lack of side effects, Zcash is certainly also quite fun, because the size of transactions in Zcash is very huge. It cannot be said that there are no side effects. There is a side effect, and Zcash very large transactions. The very proofs are very large in size, and the generation of zero knowledge proofs is a few minutes calculation. If you're trying to make a transaction with that and this address, then you can not do it from a mobile phone, or there are always side effects. But just the absence of side effects cannot be said. They're always present. Any solution raises a problem. Yes, it does. And actually, this last point is that JavaScript makes smart contract for JavaScript. There is only a very small problem here. In fact, in general, why I invented a new virtual machine for the Ethereum is primarily a concept of gas. Because in our usual calculations, there is no need to do gas, and therefore to build the calculation of gas in the usual calculations, in the usual Java virtual machine, or on WebAssembly again, which is used in EOS, it's completely differently redesigned. For example, you may know there is Peter Chaban, who works in Polkadot, who previously dealt directly with WebAssembly. They are concerned with the fact that they are revoking WebAssembly to use it in Polkadot. And what he says is that they have made everything just fine. They copied everything from scratch simply because it's necessary to insert the concept of gas there, and simply because he needs to turn a virtual machine that was non-deterministic, because there are different calculations on different hardware, and the WebAssembly were given different result, and the need to do it all in such a way that it gives a deterministic result, remove all functions with a random one, and so on. That's it. It's a huge job which you cannot just take in JavaScript. You cannot. You can make JavaScript in the first place limited. But this will no longer be JavaScript. This will be a JavaScript interface that knows everything, and plus one can make a typed output system like in Haskell. Suppose you're typing Solidity, but in JavaScript you can limit. And strictly speaking, in my last remark, here's a question. Why do we need an exchange with a single Ethereum running there, and the smart contracts that are running there? I was talking about the experiment. Just a bunch of all my exchanges, but this did not. In each exchange, there must be some new rules. Look, the experiment should have some kind of goal. It's not carried out simply because it's boring. They should get the result from which they were built. We are doing something there to get the result and to think on the basis of the result further. Okay, let's close this issue. No, the concept is cool, everyone speculated a little, entertain it, so thanks. They cheered up, thank you, let's applause. Baby.